Reese Witherspoon announced a return to her most iconic role, but after a series of delays, she announced it's not going forward and she's out of the part. Reese Witherspoon was actually the first person to audition for the part of Elle Woods in Legally Blonde. Even though the writers wanted her for the movie, the studio didn't think she was a good pick and they wanted Christina Applegate instead. And the reason was, at the time, studios didn't think she was enough of a draw, where she just did the movie Little Nicky, which was a huge failure, making only $58 million on a budget of $85 million, and also bombed in the movie Best Laid Plans, which only made $27,000 on a budget of $7 million. She also flopped doing the movie Twilight, which failed, making only $15 million on a budget of $20 million. Her only successful movie at the time was Cruel Intentions, which made $76 million on a budget of $11 million, and also her first movie with Selma Blair. But the problem was, everyone thought the only reason for the success was Sarah Michelle Gellar was the main actress and she was known for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But because of that, the studio wanted Christina Applegate to do the role of Elle Woods in Legally Blonde instead, because she was famous for doing 258 of the 259 episodes of Married with Children. But then luck went for Reese Witherspoon, because Christina Applegate turned down Legally Blonde, saying she didn't want to be typecast playing the dumb blonde, which she felt she did for years on Married with Children. Then Reese Witherspoon was once again rejected for the part of Elle Woods because the studio wanted to pick Britney Spears instead. But again, Reese Witherspoon lucked out, because Britney Spears during that period did a performance on Saturday Night Live which was deemed a total disaster, so because of the studio wouldn't hire her. Making Legally Blonde was a challenge because it was actually based on a book by Amanda Brown, who was a Stanford lawyer who had to deal with the stereotypes of being seen as a dumb blonde, so she wrote an entire book about it. And the initial idea for the Legally Blonde movie was to make it much raunchier and an R-rated comedy where it wouldn't actually involve a trial. In the end, it would be Reese Witherspoon's character marries her professor, but they opted not to go with that, saying it sent the wrong message. Casting was a difficult thing, where Jennifer Coolidge wasn't originally the frontrunner for the part, where the studio wanted to go with Courtney Love, but that deal didn't work out, so Jennifer Coolidge ended up getting it. And finally, for the role of Vivian, it went to Selma Blair, because she already did the movie Cruel Intentions with Reese Witherspoon. They thought they had good chemistry together. All of this happened and the movie ended up being an extreme hit, making $142 million on a budget of just $18 million. Because of the studio wanted to make a sequel, but they ran into the problem that Kirsten Smith and Karen Lutz, who are the writers to the first movie, didn't want to return. And Legally Blonde's original director, Robert Lukatic, didn't want to return for the sequel as well. And the movie also ran into a problem that they couldn't put Selma Blair into it because she signed on for another project, so Legally couldn't do the movie. So what they ended up getting with Legally Blonde 2 just didn't pack the same reviews as the first movie, getting only a 35% Rotten Tomatoes compared to the first one that got a 72%. But still, it ended up being a very profitable movie, where it had a reported budget between $25 and $45 million, but still managed to make $125 million. Because of that, the studio still wanted to make a Legally Blonde 3, but the issue was they lost their biggest asset, and that was Reese Witherspoon. And that was because 2 years after Legally Blonde 2, Reese Witherspoon did the Johnny Cash movie Walk the Line, which was a huge hit, making $189 million on a budget of $28 million, and it got such good reviews she actually won the award for Best Actress. And that same year, Reese Witherspoon also did the movie Just Like Heaven, which got mediocre reviews with a 53% on Rotten Tomatoes and wasn't profitable, making $103 million on a budget of $58 million, so because of that, she decided to move away from doing comedy movies. When it came to the Legally Blonde franchise without Reese Witherspoon, they decided to come up with the idea to make Legally Blonde more like the series Air Bud. Explaining that the first Air Bud movie was a huge hit in 1997, making $28 million on a budget of $3 million. The sequels began to bomb, where the first sequel made only $10 million on a budget of $11 million, and the VHS sequels to Air Bud afterwards didn't sell well either. Instead, in 2006, they decided to focus on the approach of being cute with the movie Air Buddies, which was so popular they did 9 sequels. Because of that, in 2009, they had the idea to create Legally Blonde, starring the Rosso sisters, focusing on the idea of doing younger sisters to Elle Woods, and they thought it would end up leading to a series of DVD movies. The reason they hired the Rosso sisters was they previously gained fame for doing the show Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, where people infatuate the idea they were twins. Legally Blonde just didn't work, where people didn't think the Rosso sisters had anything to do with the original story of Legally Blonde, and because of that, the movie was panned with bad reviews and they didn't do a sequel. It's also just a horrible idea to try and build a franchise off the Rosso twins, because they actually hated acting, were only doing it because of their mom, and then when their mom passed away in the mid-2010s, they deleted all their social media and they haven't really been seen by the public in over 10 years. And after that, Legally Blonde seemed dead for years, until Reese Witherspoon in 2016 announced she was forming her own studio called Hello Sunshine. Hello Sunshine as a studio had some major hits doing TV shows for big platforms and streaming, such as Big Little Lies and The Morning Show, where they actually did over $1 billion in deals. So finally in 2019, Reese Witherspoon confirmed her studio did a deal to make a Legally Blonde 3, where she would be starring and Mindy Kaling would also be the writer and possibly the director. But then they ran into the issue that the pandemic hit, and then because of that, everything was delayed for a period of 2 years. Then Mindy Kaling revealed she was off the project for Legally Blonde 3, saying the writer's strike and COVID were just massive delays, and because of that, she was no longer involved going forward. But the big factor really seemed to be money, because in 2021, Reese Witherspoon sold her studio for $900 million, and because of that, she didn't need to work on the same projects. And Reese Witherspoon also said she wasn't confident people would actually see Legally Blonde 3, because at the same time, she was 20 years older, so it wouldn't appeal with men the same way, and she wouldn't recognize with younger women the same way she was before either. And Reese Witherspoon was also discussing the idea of producing a Legally Blonde musical based on the 2007 musical version that went to Broadway. That idea seemed to die after the Mean Girls musical movie didn't do so well, making $105 million on a budget of $36 million, which was considered a little bit of a disappointment even though it was profitable. So instead, Reese Witherspoon announced she will be doing a prequel series to Legally Blonde called Elle, and she actually cast Lexi Minitree to play a younger version of Elle Woods. She seems like the perfect casting because just looking at her, she seems exactly like Reese Witherspoon when she was younger. Going forward, she doesn't really expect a Legally Blonde 3 to ever happen. With that, I'm Charles Perrault. Please subscribe to learn something.